What's up everyone, Logic Over Emotion coming at you with another video. In this video, I want to talk about the Twitter hack and just give my 2 cents on it. So we're going to go ahead and get right into that. I just want to premise this video by stating that I have been in IT for about 8 years now. I have been in IT security for about 2 years. I've worked in various industries. I've also done some consultant work, and so I have a pretty good idea of security. Currently, right now, I work in security every single day. It's what I do. I help do development on a security tool where we do custom workflows for the company, and we handle access management from an automation standpoint. So we write a lot of code around solutions that help us automatically manage employees that come in, that move around, that do different things and need access to systems. And so that's what I do day to day. Now, this Twitter hack is kind of scary because at least based on the article that I read, Twitter has an internal tool that they use to manage accounts. And apparently people who had access to that tool, that their accounts were compromised and somehow hackers got a hold of them, and they had all these privileges that basically could do what seemed like anything. I mean, they were posting on behalf of the accounts and everything. So they had very, very, very deep access. And, I sat wondering, like, how could a company like Twitter not have certain things in place to stop this when the company I'm a part of is tiny? Like our security operations is not huge, and identity and access management by itself, there's only like 4 of us. If you count my boss, there's like 4 of us. So the fact that for this to happen, certain security procedures would have not had to been in place. But of course, I don't actually know all the details of the hack, so I can only give my 2 cents based on what I've seen in my experience in IT. So the first thing I would say is it's amazing that they didn't have a disaster recovery plan in place to immediately get a hold of everything and get everything back up. I believe I read that it took them a little while to regain access, and to me, that is not a great solution. You should have special elevated accounts that can only be activated in certain ways for certain conditions, things that you can't hit remotely or anything like that, that you should be able to physically in person on that network gain quick access to and gain control of your network if this were to happen. So first and foremost, that wasn't in place. Now, depending on the actual nature of the hack, the second thing that just kind of rings out to me that they may not have in place is multi-factor authentication for their administrative accounts. Now, I believe you should have multi-factor authentication for any account that logs into a network. The fact that you don't have this, I just don't understand. If someone was attempting to access your account to a network, period, you should get some type of secondary notification that forces you to validate that that is you logging in. If I try to log in from home on my machine, I have to get my phone, go to our authentication app and say, yes, this is me that just attempted to log in. So long story short, no one can log into my account without me approving it from my phone. As long as I have my phone, it doesn't even matter if they have my password, they cannot get into my account. And so it really had me leaning toward, like, is this an actual inside job where, there was some database administrator or something that was paid a lot of money to provide access to certain things? Like, what's shocking to me with the level of logging that we do today, and we log everything. I shouldn't say everything, but we know what's going on our network. We are very aware. If anything looks funny, we're getting alerts. There have been situations in the past where I would get alerted at 5 a.m. Actually, we had 2 hacks that actually happened, and it was funny because it was I had just came on to two separate companies. That this happened at two stages in my career, and both of them ended up getting hacked because the current security policies that were in place were not up to par with what they needed to be. And yeah, so they got hacked, and I remember getting phone calls at like 5 in the morning that we had stuff going on, and so. Yeah, I immediately knew there wasn't anything on that network that you could do from a malicious standpoint that we couldn't track. And so if you have people trying to punch into your network, the fact that you don't have visibility on it is a big problem. The other big problem is a company like Twitter should be spending millions of dollars on penetration testing. That is where you hire an ethical hacking company to do everything in their power to get in your network, and then they let you know what they find. I just don't understand how platforms can get this big and security is something that you're not taking serious. And but I will say, I'm glad that stuff like this is being exposed, because now more people take security from a more serious stance. One of the complaints that I had just working in IT in general is that for the longest, before like the real tech boom and all that, IT was just a means to get things done. It didn't really drive the business. And so people would do just what it took to get by without really giving IT a budget, without being worried about security. And now with all these things happening and with these big companies getting hacked, it's allowing more people to put money into security. I used to often make the joke like that, Norton Security or some of these other security companies came together and started hacking these people just so there would be more of a need for their industry. And I think that it's a very good thing in a sense that you see what can happen and it makes you put more effort into your security services. And I just, for anyone out there who is starting a business or it has a business and your business may not be huge, start thinking about security. Think about the ways to actually budget security in, because you are going to need it at some point. And now I also want to give a few points on, if you use these platforms, a few common sense points that I think people just don't put into everyday practice. Now the first one is, even though I believe we have password lockout or we have account lockouts and everything like that on so many bad entries, still use a complicated password. Just because it takes 5 attempts to get locked out, if a person can get enough general information on you, or if you're using stuff like the street you grew up on and the year you were born as the numbers or something, yeah, people can crack that pretty easily, and they may not need a million attempts. So first and foremost, use something like Dashlane, KeePass, or something where you can store your information. Many of the password management tools today allow you to have them in your phone. You can sync it to your phone, and so if you access stuff on your phone, you can do it that way. They have browser extensions and everything. So I personally use Dashlane. I pay like $60 for it a year. Probably the best $60 that I spend, because I have between all the accounts that I have and other things from different, credit cards and stuff like that I just want easily accessible. I can do all that through Dashlane, and it keeps my life simple. So use a password management tool and use more complex passwords. Now, if you do that, you won't even really have to worry about option number 2. And option number 2 is making sure that you don't use the same password for multiple platforms. I know it's easier to do, but given the fact that many times you don't even need to log in, I don't see a need for that, because you don't have to validate as often with certain tools today. But people nonetheless still do it. And the problem with that is, if, say, Twitter gets hacked and they somehow can decrypt the passwords in the database and they drop that to the hackers, the first thing they're going to do is try those credentials, your email and username, passwords. They're going to try that for other popular websites, and they're going to see if they can gain access through shared passwords. So keep that in mind. And I would say the very, very, very most obvious one at this point, because this is how many of the hacks happen, and actually the one of the hacks that I was a part of that I had to repair was due to this, and that's just clicking on rogue links that you're not sure where they're going to take you. Keep in mind, when you are on a phone or something like that, you are many times already authenticated. So if you click a link and you're already logged into something, there's a lot that can happen there. So be aware of what, be aware of what you're granting to certain apps as far as permissions, stuff like your Bluetooth connectivity, your camera, your mic. Make sure you understand when you're accepting permissions, because if someone were to hijack access to that application and you've allowed, access to your mic or something like that, then they can find different ways to listen in on you and do different things like that. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to get a few tips out there that, may help you. I found this of interest because, like I said, I work in this day to day, and I can just imagine that some people over at Twitter had some very long nights, and hopefully they figured out what it was and got it patched, and hopefully they put in the rudimentary security practices that should have been put in place from the start. I think that, when something like that happens, it causes you to completely revamp your security. And so I believe that Twitter is going to step that up. And that should also be a sign for all these other companies. But like I said, always remember too that the weakest link in any network's security policy, the weakest link is always the human being. Because again, if you compromise a human being and they have the level of access you need, it's not about stealing the password. At that point, you just got to give them to give it to you. So also remember that too. But anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Change those passwords if you're using shared passwords. Be smart. Don't get hacked. All right, you guys take care.